Welcome to In Focus. With this fall's federal election fast approaching, we wanted to take some time to educate you on some of the major issues that are currently being debated in our nation's capital. And we're joined today by television host and activist Faytene Grasseschi, who looks at these issues through the Canadian Christian lens and has some insight into what they mean for us. Welcome back to In Focus, Faytene Grasseschi, my friend.
Always a pleasure, always a pleasure.
You know, when we look at this election, many are saying this is going to be a watershed moment for Canada.
I believe so.
And, you know, when we start looking first at the political climate and what's taking place, kind of give us a bird's eye view of what you're seeing right now and across party platforms and what's taking place.
Well, there are so many issues, and I know you're going to be highlighting different ones in shows to come that are worthy of our focus and attention coming into this federal election. Freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, so much. But one of the ones that's really hijacked my attention is the federal debt. You know, recently I interviewed Christine Van Gyn from the Canadian Taxpayer Federation and learned that in Ontario, the marginal tax rate right now in Canada is as high as 53%. Let me break that down for you. What that means is when you include income tax, tax at the till, gas tax, and all the little hidden fees that kind of hit us throughout the year when you're renewing your driver's license, that type of thing, the average Canadian can be paying over 50% of their annual income simply to the government. So even if you don't work for the government, you work for the government. And that's money that's not going to food, it's not going to your future, it's not going to education, it's not going to retirement. And what I'm starting to see here is like, okay, we're spending $80 million a day right now just to service the interest on the federal debt. Brian, the last budget cycle that we had, we paid more to interest on the federal debt than the deficit. The interest on the federal debt was $24 billion. The deficit was about $19 billion. All of this money at the end of the line means we can't service our veterans in a way, our single moms.
Social programs.
Social programs, First Nations kids who don't have clean drinking water. And so at the end of the line on this fiscal imprudence, people are being hurt. And not only today, but future generations. So this is a huge issue, this issue of deficit, and I would say radical deficit spending.
And, you know, I think we have to reframe what it means as far as what the debt is currently, because I think so many times it's just hard, it's staggering. Some of the figures are around 700 billion. Put that in layman terms. Help us.
Well, I'll tell you what you owe on that 700 billion. How about that? Okay, it hits personal.
Be nice. Come on.
You owe and I owe about over 18,000 of the federal debt. That's your portion. You owe. So at some point in your lifetime, you know, hopefully in the near future, hopefully we'll be paying this down quicker rather than later. You know, 18,000 has to come out of your pocket, out of your muscle time. You add the provincial debt on top of that, it's another 22,000. So your total debt portion, federal and provincial, is about 40,000 if you live in Ontario. If you live in Alberta, it's about 30,000. If you live in Quebec, it's about 45,000.
Just for breathing.
Yeah, just for breathing, just for being born, just for immigrating to Canada. And then if you're a household of 4 or 5, you know, just multiply it, right? And so this is, what this all boils down to is more taxes. At the end of the line, we are spending more of our life just working to pay taxes than to build a future and a family.
So many times people say, you know what, but this is a fear monger and you guys are really blowing these things out of proportion. But help us to understand what economists say during a time of debt. What should we be focusing on?
Well, first of all, I was shocked to learn that this is pretty new. This type of national fiscal behavior really only began in the 70s, where governments began to really, you know, aggressively spend and run deficits year after year. When I was born, my portion of the federal debt was about $700. Now, as I just mentioned, it's about maybe $19,000.
And we just took a screenshot before you even came on the air.
Yeah, about $19,000. Okay, so that's how quickly it's gone up in the last 40 years. Before the 70s, we're literally walking off our map every day. We are in a massive fiscal experiment, and that should cause concern, and it needs to be a conversation.
Because it is affecting our children.
Yeah, a righteous man leaves an inheritance for their grandchildren.
Yeah.
Right now, we are
Solid.
not doing that in Canada. We're leaving a massive debt burden to our grandchildren, but we can change it,
Now,
Brian. We can change it.
Let's turn it now another direction. What can we do, and how could we begin to get involved?
Well, okay.
Voting our voice, letting our voice be heard.
Sure, yeah, it needs to be an issue in the election. We need to elect governments provincially, municipally, and federally that are committed to balancing the budget and paying down the debt, and maybe even bringing forward balanced budget legislation.
Yes.
Like, why is it legal, you know, to spend our grandchildren's money this aggressively? I'm just putting some thoughts out there. The other thing is we need to pray. We need to pray that God gives our leaders creative solutions to deal with this fiscal issue and to break the injustice off of future generations.
What about writing our government representatives?
Sure, do it.
You know, when you look at this election, how should we be looking at voting and getting out? Because I really want a call to action right now. What would you say to that person that says, I haven't voted in the past, but why is it important now to be involved?
It is so important. It is so important. The governments that we elect today are building our tomorrow, right?
Yes.
And we have a stewardship. We have a responsibility to the Lord, but also to future generations to steward this time well so that they are blessed and not burdened.
Yeah.
And that the minimal thing to do is to vote.
Well,
But people can check out formycanada.ca. There's other organizations out there that will help break it all down and make it easy so you know where to go.
and simplify it and get involved.
Yeah.
Faytene Grasseschi, my friend. Hey, it's good seeing you.
Thanks for
and
having
great
me.
catching up with you. You know, we want you to get involved, and make sure 700club.ca that you look at our website. We'll direct you into those areas where you could be informed. But we also want to make sure that we pray, but we make our voice be heard. We'll be right back after this.